The train that picks up no one, but drops something off. I moved into my cousin's old apartment 2 weeks ago, a cramped second-floor unit squeezed above a long-forgotten pawn shop near the industrial district. The rent was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but I didn't ask questions. What I didn't know was how close I was to an abandoned freight rail line, rusted and forgotten for years, or so I thought. The night I arrived, I heard the train for the first time. It wasn't the usual distant rumble of passing freight, this was different. It was slow, deliberate, and eerily quiet, as if the wheels barely whispered over the tracks. I rushed to the window, but saw nothing, just the empty rails glimmering faintly under the flickering street lamp. That night, I dreamt of a train filled with shadowy passengers, faceless and silent, sitting motionless as the carriages rattled endlessly through a fog-shrouded void. At each stop, they never got off, but from the dark gaps between the cars, small, grotesque shapes dropped onto the platform, twisted things that skittered into the shadows and vanished. When I woke, I found a strange black feather on my windowsill, one unlike any bird I'd ever seen. It was oily and cold to the touch, almost humming with a faint vibration. The nights after that, the train came again. Always at 2:41 a.m., the same slow, creeping sound that didn't match the city's usual noise. At first, I thought it was in my head, but neighbors whispered about it too, an old ghost train that ran on a forgotten schedule. Then things escalated. On the third night, something hit the side of my building. I looked outside and saw a patch of ground littered with tiny, jagged bones and black feathers. There was no sign of any animal, nothing recognizable. It looked like the leftovers of something unnatural. I tried to leave once. Packed my bags, got in my car, and planned to drive away at dawn. But on the way out, the train was there, stretched out on the tracks like a serpent in the fog. No locomotive, no engineer. Just endless cars, each window smeared with condensation and something darker, like a shadow pressed from inside. The car beside mine on the highway suddenly stalled, and inside, I saw something crawling on the driver's window, a hand with long, brittle fingers tapping insistently. When I looked away, the car vanished. I screamed and floored the gas pedal, only to find myself back at my apartment, as if I'd been looped into a nightmare I couldn't escape. Now, I hear the knocking. Not on doors or windows, this time, on my walls. Slow, deliberate taps that mimic a heartbeat. Sometimes, I swear I feel the vibration through the floor, as if the train's wheels are beneath my feet, ready to stop and unload whatever it's been carrying all these years. I found another black feather stuck in the front tire of my car this morning. It wasn't mine. I don't know what the train drops off, but it's never good. Things move in the night here, scratching behind walls, whispering just beyond hearing, always coming closer. When I tried to call for help, the phone line was dead, and my texts never sent. The only message I received was a photo of a dark train car, empty except for a single seat, stained with something red and fresh. My own name was written in smeared letters on the seat back. If you ever find yourself near an abandoned train line that hums in the dead of night, listen closely, and remember these rules. Rules to survive. 1. Never approach the tracks when you hear the slow rumble at 2:41 a.m. The train is not for the living. 2. Do not look into the train cars. The shadows inside will see you back. 3. Never touch the black feathers or bones left behind, they're marks, a warning you've been chosen. 4. If you hear tapping on your walls or doors, do not respond. Do not open anything. 5. Above all, do not try to leave once the train appears, it does not let go of its passengers, living or dead. I don't know how much longer I have before the train comes back for me. But if you hear its whistle in the fog, don't run toward the tracks. Stay inside. Lock every door. And pray you never see what it drops off next. Last night was the worst. The knocking started early, barely past midnight, soft at first, like a cautious tap, then growing louder and more urgent, echoing through the hollow walls of my apartment. I swear the sound wasn't just on the surface, it vibrated deep in my bones, a sinister rhythm matching my pounding heart. I sat frozen, clutching a kitchen knife, staring at the peeling wallpaper where the taps seemed together. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and plunged me into pitch darkness. For a moment, I could hear nothing but the knocking, now desperate and frantic, pounding like some monstrous heartbeat trying to burst through the walls. I grabbed my phone for a flashlight, but it was dead, completely black, no power, no signal. That's when I heard it, the faintest whisper, like someone breathing just behind the drywall. I pressed my ear against the wall and the breath turned into a low, guttural growl, so close I could feel the hot air, rancid and wet. Then came the scratching, nails, or claws, scraping slowly across the surface. It was desperate, and cruel. I stumbled back in terror as the knocking shifted to a maddening pounding that shook the entire building. I swear, the whole apartment was alive, a beast snarling and clawing its way inside. Suddenly, through the darkness, a faint greenish light flickered under the door. I froze. That sickly, unnatural glow I'd seen once before, coming from the open doors of that ghostly train. The light pooled on the floor, spreading like a slow poison. And then I saw it, two thin, black fingers slipping beneath the gap, curling like twisted roots searching for something to grasp. I slammed the door shut, but the fingers kept crawling, pressing flat and stretching impossibly thin, trying to force their way inside. I don't know how long I stood there, trembling in the dark, but the fingers finally withdrew, pulling back as if stung by something. The knocking stopped abruptly. Silence swallowed the room, so thick and heavy I could hear my own breath echoing like a scream. The next morning, I found more black feathers scattered across the hallway, leading toward the stairwell like a grotesque breadcrumb trail. The stairs, too, seemed to shiver and hum with the train's presence, even though no train had moved down those tracks for years. But it wasn't just the apartment anymore. I noticed strange things happening outside, the streetlights flickering at the exact time the train whistle blew, neighbors' windows suddenly fogging up as if breathed on by invisible lips, shadows stretching too long and moving against the wind. At one point, I caught sight of a figure standing just beyond the edge of the street, thin and hunched, wearing a tattered conductor's uniform stained with rust and something darker. Its face was obscured, but those eyes glowed faintly, empty sockets dripping black liquid. When it noticed me looking, it vanished into the fog as if swallowed whole. That's when the scratching started outside my door, soft, scraping noises like something dragging itself on broken nails. I tried to ignore it, but it grew louder every night, turning into desperate clawing as if whatever it was wanted in more than just a glance. I put every chair I could find against the door, but at 2:41 a.m., the sound stopped just long enough for me to hear the faintest whisper behind the wood, "Come." And I know it's only a matter of time before I answer. Last night, I stayed awake until dawn, listening for the train's approach. At exactly 2:41, the distant whistle screamed through the fog, long, low, and filled with unbearable sorrow. The walls trembled, and through the thin glass of my window, I could see the faint outline of the train sliding silently along the tracks, endless cars trailing like a nightmare snake. The windows of the train were empty, but in one, I saw a flash of movement, a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. I slammed the curtains shut, but I still felt the eyes watching. That's when I noticed a new black feather on my windowsill, slick with wetness and colder than ice. I touched it with trembling fingers and felt a sharp prick, like a needle, then a flood of cold dread swept through me, as if the train had marked me, claimed me as its next passenger. I'm running out of time. The knocking, the whispering, the scratches, they're all growing louder, closer. The train doesn't pick up passengers, it collects them, leaves their bodies broken and hollow. And it always drops something off. Last time, it was bones and feathers. Next time, it could be me. If you hear the whistle, don't try to find the train. Don't listen for the knocking. Don't look for the black feathers or the shadows crawling behind the walls. Just hide. Because whatever it drops off, it's coming for you next. Last night, I made the mistake of ignoring this warning. It started just before midnight, the kind of silence that feels thick enough to choke on. The city's usual hum of distant sirens and traffic vanished, replaced by an oppressive stillness that crept into my bones. Then the whistle blew, long, mournful, like the cry of a dying thing. It wasn't a sound that carried on the wind, it was a sound that invaded your mind, twisting reality around you. I could feel it pressing in, squeezing my thoughts tighter, pulling at the corners of my sanity. I couldn't stop myself. Drawn like a moth to flame, I stepped out onto the fire escape, ignoring the icy grip of fear in my chest. The air was cold, sharper than any winter night should be. I could see the train materializing from the fog, sliding silently along the rusted tracks like a specter born from the earth itself. It stretched endlessly, a black serpent of rusted metal and broken dreams. The windows were darkened, but faint flickers of movement, shapes, shadows, danced just behind the glass. Then I saw them. They weren't passengers. They were twisted things, hunched and crawling, slipping from one car to the next with unnatural, jerking motions. Their bodies were elongated and broken, like marionettes with snapped strings, limbs twisting in ways no living creature should move. They clung to the walls of the train cars, staring out with hollow, gleaming eyes that pierced through the fog and fixed themselves on me. My skin crawled as I realized they were watching for something, or someone. I tried to pull back inside, but a cold wind swept up the fire escape stairs, carrying with it the faint scratching sound I'd heard for weeks, long, desperate claws scraping against concrete. Suddenly, a dark shape lunged from beneath the train car, crawling up the tracks toward me. I stumbled backward, falling hard against the cold brick wall of the building, my heart pounding so loud it felt like it would explode. I ran inside, slamming and locking every door and window, but the pounding followed me, relentless and frantic. The knocking on the walls resumed, louder than ever, now accompanied by a wet, dragging sound as if something was pulling itself inch by inch along the wood and plaster. The shadows in the corners began to writhe and stretch, pulsing with a life of their own. I felt breath on the back of my neck, cold, fetid, and rancid, like something long dead. And then came the whisper. It was not a voice, but a low, guttural sound that slithered through the cracks in the walls, crawling over my skin like icy fingers. The words were impossible to understand, but I could feel their meaning, the promise of inevitable arrival, the certainty that I was marked. The black feather on my windowsill gleamed in the flickering candlelight, its edges seeming to ripple and move as if alive. The train wasn't just coming for me. It was already inside. I found scratches on the floorboards beneath my bed this morning, long, deep gouges like claws that could tear through steel. The walls, too, bore marks, tiny, pock-marked holes leaking dark stains that smelled like burnt sulfur. My reflection in the cracked mirror flickered and warped, and for a brief moment, I saw those hollow eyes staring back at me from behind the glass. I tried calling for help, but the lines were dead. My messages don't send. Even my phone's battery drains impossibly fast, as if the train's presence was draining the very energy from the world around me. I'm trapped in a loop now, caught between the moments before the train arrives and the eternal nightmare that follows. Every night, I hear the whistle grow louder, the knocking grow closer, and the shadows stretch wider. And every night, I pray for dawn. But the train never arrives at dawn. It comes only in the dead hours, when the world sleeps and the fog thickens, and it drops off its passengers one by one, broken, hollow shells, with black feathers clutched in their cold hands. If you're reading this, if you hear the whistle, don't run toward the tracks. Don't answer the knocking. Don't pick up the feathers. Because it's coming for you next. And when it does, you'll realize the train never picks up anyone. It only drops things off. And what it leaves behind is worse than death.